Oh, hello! Today we are wrapping up the month of February's reading, which has been another really high productive and high quality reading month for me. And I was looking at my stats and I was thinking, am I just like in a good mood? Why do I have so many things that I'm rating this highly? And I honestly wonder if just because like the state of the world, which I know is a lot right now and very intense and sad, and I mean it has been for, well, forever, but particularly these last 2 years, it's just been a real grind, and I feel like the last few months it's really been coming to a head, particularly in February. So I wonder if I also was just like, I'm reading and not thinking about all of that. So maybe I was just overly generous this month, but I was reading a lot of things that I was enjoying, and I read a lot. Some of that also I think is because I was doing more audio this month than I have since the pandemic started, so that also just meant I got through more books because I had more opportunities to read. But anyway, we'll start as always with my stats and challenge progress, and then we will move into my disappointments, my surprises, and my hits, which if you cannot tell, there are several. There's a lot this month. So without further ado, let's just dive on in. So in the month of February, I read 27 books. That is nearly a book a day. Don't know how that happened because I know for sure I had days off where I was not reading anything. So I don't know. 20 of those were books that I owned and 7 of them were books that I did not own. I read a total of 9,469 pages for an average book length of 350 pages. I suspect that there is one book in particular that is skewing all of that upwards. The average age of book I read was 4 years old, and the average amount of time a book had been on my TBR was 8 months. I paid for 44.44% of the books that I read. The average cost to me was $5.81. In terms of genre, like last month, my most read genre was mystery. I have been kind of on a roll with mystery, but that was also followed by fantasy, and then various forms of nonfiction, so memoir, philosophical nonfiction, historical nonfiction, general nonfiction, just all the nonfiction. I read a lot of that this month. And then a sprinkling of my other typical genres, particularly romance. So, good genre mix this month, with mystery continuing to lead the charge. And as you can see, very highly rated month. I had a lot of 4 and 4.5 stars. I had 5 4.5 stars, which is pretty unusual for me. So we have a lot of those we're gonna cover. Again, it doesn't surprise me in the sense of I was doing my Bookish Realm nonfiction challenge, and Ashley, generally nonfiction is often rated more highly for me anyway, because if I finish it, it's because I'm enjoying it and I'm good at picking out nonfiction that I'm gonna like and be interested in. But she obviously is a great recommender of nonfiction and picked out a number of very high quality recommendations on that front. So, I guess not surprising, and my average rating was 3.55555 stars, which has to be, that's very, very high. So statistically, a very, very strong month. Now, moving into challenges that I've not already talked about or that I will talk about in my different categories. So first of all, I did read one Nora Roberts book this month. I read Abandoned in Death by J.D. Robb, who is also Nora Roberts. And this is not one of the best in the series, but I do think that it's fun. It's a good one. I definitely felt like the front half of this was not as strong as the back half. Took a while to get going. I was struggling to actually like really get into this one, but I loved the way that it ended and it surprised me. Basically, we were spending time with a certain group of characters, and I thought it was for one reason, but it ended up being for a totally different reason, and the way that that was handled I thought was really fun and very satisfying to me. So I actually ended up really liking the way that this book progressed, but it did take me a while to get into it. And could this be one you could start with if you'd never read Nora Roberts before? I guess you could, but I would still, the most recent release that I'm like, yeah, you could start there is the one that came out last fall, which I think is Forgotten in Death. So I think that's going to be my like recent one you could start with if you don't want to go all the way back to the beginning. But yeah, this was good, not one of the best, but definitely very entertaining and very satisfying. Okay, and then there's 4 arcs that I read that I'm not going to talk about in a different category, so I wanted to make sure I gave you my thoughts on. I will also have my Q1 arc roundup coming up here in a few weeks, so look out for that if you want to see all of my thoughts on the books that I read early that are coming out in Jan, Feb, March. But the ones that I read this month that I'm not going to talk about in a different category, first of all, This Might Hurt by Stephanie Roybal, I believe is the author. This is an isolation trope and a cult story. I don't know. I liked the trope combo, and the actual writing was nice. Actually, really nice, I thought. But I felt like the plot was pretty messy. I actually really liked the way the plot ended. I guess kind of similar to what I was just talking about for Abandoned in Death. But I was not totally convinced about the progression of the plot. And some of the character work I thought was a little iffy. So I don't know. I think that this one is worth trying if you like those tropes. And I especially feel that way because the writing itself is pretty nice. But just know that it's very slow burn. And I wouldn't call it like a favorite for me. But yeah, it was okay. But I wouldn't say that it was a favorite. And I've gathered that people liked her first book a lot better than this one. I've not read that one, so can't say there. But yeah. Meh for me. Then Portrait of a Thief by Grace Lee. This is a really interesting book. I don't know that I've read a book quite like this before. It's a heist thriller, but it really is kind of more of a character study in some ways. I think I put in my Goodreads review, I liked the portrait part of this more than I liked the thief part of this. So if you're really looking for like a super well executed heist thriller, I don't know that you're gonna love this, but as a character study of the different people involved in the heist, and particularly exploring themes around the Chinese diaspora, because basically the setup for this one is some college kids who, through reasons, end up steal Chinese artifacts from a museum. They are all, yes, I think they are all of Chinese descent, so it's sort of talking about their identity as Chinese American. Yeah, I don't know. I think that part was really interesting, and the writing itself I liked. I just don't know that the plot was wholly convincing, and when I left it, I was like, I bet that this would make, from a plot perspective, a better movie than it did a book. But it's interesting. I think it's definitely worth checking out because it's a little bit different than something I've read before, so I can see why it's buzzy because it's just, it feels fresh. Maybe that's the way to say it. Ooh, and then The Resting Place by Camilla Sten. This is one where I really liked the writing. I've not read from Camilla Sten before, but I would definitely pick something else up from her. Also, that means I need to shout out to the translator because I believe this was originally written in Swedish. It is set in Sweden, and this thematically is really interesting. It has a lot of things to say, I think, about the concept of passing, which in the American context, we usually think about that with relation to BIPOC people passing as white. And in this, it's more of like, it's different in the Swedish context, and I just thought that was interesting. I also I would probably describe this as a psychological thriller approaching horror because it's definitely an isolated closed circle thriller. Basically, they get snowed in at this creepy country estate because there's a group of them there after the death of this woman who has left the estate to her daughter and her granddaughter, and so they're like inventorying and like finding what's there and their secrets from the past. I will also say this is the rare situation where there's a dual timeline where I liked both timelines. So see, it's possible. This is one where I was equally interested in both timelines. I will say that the reason I would give this a 3.5 rather than a 4 is that I think that the ultimate ending kind of was a little bit, like, I don't know that I totally bought the ultimate ending, but I really liked the journey to get there. And like I said, I really liked the writing. I, for whatever reason, often struggle with like Nordic crime. I haven't found a lot of authors whose sort of style works for me, but Camilla Sten definitely did. So we'll definitely look for more from her. And I think if you like an isolation trope, this is totally worth seeking out. And then finally, To Marry and to Meddle. This is one where I read it and was like, objectively, this is probably like a 3 or 3.5, but I just needed this book when I read it, so I was like 4. I really enjoyed this. I'll say that about one other one when we get there, but I just had a fun time in this book. I didn't buy the characters' romance together fully, but I just loved the characters individually so much, and this made me laugh out loud. Martha Waters' humor works for me, which is a very idiosyncratic thing. Humor is so subjective. For me, her little asides and stuff are very funny, and it reminds me a lot of Tessa Dare. I think also maybe because it's been so long since we've gotten a new Tessa Dare, this is what I want from historical romance. It's a very easy breezy and light. It has some interesting things going on in terms of sort of like family power dynamics of the period, and especially like the position women were put in to be bartering chips for money and power. So I thought that was interesting, but yeah, basically the setup is it's a marriage of convenience, and the dude is marrying her because he's the second son of a marquis, and he runs this scandalous theater, and he wants more respectable people to come to the theater, so he thinks if he makes this respectable marriage, that will kind of improve his reputation and help bring people to the theater. And then she is marrying him because her father is up to his eyeballs in debt and other things. She has been having to be like courted by one of the main people who has his debts, and he is like a really gross, odious man. And she kind of knows eventually she's gonna have to marry him probably. So rather than doing that, she's gonna marry this guy. He's gonna pay off the debts, keep the other things at bay, and it will all be good. So I think plot-wise, this was a little meandering and not super focused, but it was a lot of hang time with characters that I just really liked, and it put a smile on my face. It was just the book I needed at the moment I needed it, pretty much. So I really enjoyed this one. I will tell you, I think talking about the actual quality of this book to other people, I'd probably put it at like a 3.5, but for me, it was a 4-star and just what I needed at the moment I read it. So I really enjoyed that one. Okay, and with that being said, let's get into disappointments. All 3 of these disappointments showed up in 2 vlogs I did. So these 2 were in my Instagram Secretly Picks My TBR vlog, and then White Smoke was in my Pile of Shame vlog. So if you want the full rundown of my thoughts, you can go watch those vlogs. Let me just summarize why I picked these as the disappointments. A Lesson in Vengeance I picked as a disappointment because I DNF'd it, and while I know other people really enjoyed this, and I would say, because it's YA, I think that the quality I'm about to express of why I DNF'd it would potentially work very well for the target audience. So I DNF'd it because I found the prose unbearably melodramatic, and I just couldn't get into the story because of that. So other people probably would not have that problem, and teens in particular. I mean, I know when I was a teen, I loved some angst. So I don't think that this is this is a bad book necessarily. It's more of a Mara could not get into this, and this just wasn't a book for her kind of situation. So disappointing, because you never want to DNF something, especially when I pre-ordered it. Like, I got this right out when it got published, and I ended up DNFing. So that's disappointing. Wilder Girls, I'm going to say, is disappointing only because there were things in this that I really, really liked. And I wish that the things that bothered me hadn't been there, because I think that had they not been, this could have been like a 4 or 4.5 kind of star book, because there are really good things about this. For me, it was just pretty uneven. So that is why it's disappointing. And then White Smoke, actually pretty similarly to Wilder Girls, I found disappointing because this is my first outing with Tiffany D. Jackson. I really, really liked her actual prose. I think that was really good. And I wish I had liked this book more than I did. Again, the ending I think is pretty disappointing. Yeah, I don't know. I wish this disappoints me. This is my first outing with her because I can tell there's going to be other books from her that I'm really going to like, but this one was not wholly successful for me. So for that reason, I would call it disappointing. Then we can move to my surprises, and of them 3 are in a vlog already. So we'll start with those and just kind of go over those briefly and then get more into the 4th one. All 3 different vlogs represented here. Catherine House was in my Pile of Shame vlog, and surprised me because this is so polarizing. Most people love this or hate it, and I ended up being kind of just in the middle with it. Again, I felt very similarly about Wilder Girls, White Smoke, and Catherine House, and I gave all of them 3 stars. There are parts of these books that I think are 4 stars. There are parts of these books that I think are 2 stars. For Catherine House, the reason it wasn't disappointing and was more of a surprise is that this has been so polarizing, and I know a lot of people really, really didn't like this one, and I honestly can totally see why, because in a lot of ways it's kind of a meandering mess, but the writing is really good and the vibes are immaculate. Like, if you're cool with just reading a book for vibes, Catherine House will do that for you. So I was surprised that I didn't have a completely definitive opinion about this one, I guess is the way to say that. Twisted I put as a surprise. I read this in my Bookish Realm vlog where I was reading recommendations from Ashley, and this surprised me because I was expecting more of like just a sort of social cultural kind of nonfiction book, and it ended up having a lot of history and a lot of philosophy of Africa in it, which I really enjoyed and whet my appetite for more. And then Killing November, I read this in my Instagram Secretly Picks My TBR vlog, and this was just so fun. I don't know that I was expecting to have as much fun in this book as I did, especially because it was buzzy when it came out, but I feel like it kind of died. Like, I didn't see a lot of people talking about it after it came out. And that surprises me because this is really, really fun. And I'm gonna be sad. I know there's one more book. I'm be sad if there's no more after that, because I could see, or well, I guess I'll put it this way. If it was meant to be a duology, that's fine. If it was meant to be a trilogy or more, I'm gonna be sad because I really thought this was fun. I had good times in this. So yeah, surprised at how much fun this was. Okay, and then the one that I have not talked to you guys about yet, and that I don't know how to talk about because this is the third book in a trilogy. It's the sixth book in the realm of the Elderlings. It is a chunky big boy. It's like 900 pages. This is what I mentioned earlier where I was like, there's one book I know that is probably throwing off my overall page count here and skewing it upwards. This book, I like it. I give this 4 stars. I am very, very conflicted about the progression and the resolution of the Althea, Kennet, Paragon, Wintro aspect of this plot. So if you've read these books, you know, I'm not going to tell you what happens. I'm just going to say I feel pretty let down about how all of that progressed in terms of what it's saying thematically. There's like ways that when I look at on paper what I assume Robin Hobb was trying to do, I'm like, okay, yes, I get this on paper, but in practice, I don't. It's like one of the first times there's something that I don't feel like she really pulled off. I know some people felt that way about the ending of Assassin's Quest, and I didn't. I actually was willing to roll with that and thought it was fine. But this one, I don't know. And so it's hard because there are things that I love in this book. The Malta and Kefria of it all is great. There's lots of stuff that I actually do really, really like in this book. And as a whole, I would give this trilogy 5 stars. The Live Ship Trader trilogy is one of my all-time favorite fantasy things I've ever read, which I'm glad because they are all like 900 pages long. So it'd be a bummer to read this much and then not enjoy it. That would be sad. So I did really enjoy it, but I think it's hard leaving this book because that aspect dominates the ending of the book. And that piece I really am not convinced of, and so it leaves sort of like a sour taste in my mouth. But anyway, that being said, me and Leanna are gonna do a live stream on her channel about like comparing the 2 trilogies, I think here in a few weeks. I'll let you guys know, keep an eye out on Instagram, etc. Whenever that happens, I'll let you guys know. So I'm looking forward to talking with her about that in more detail with like full spoilers and stuff. And then next month we are gonna get started on the Tawny Man trilogy, which is the next trilogy in the overall realm of the Elderling series. So looking forward to that, but I definitely need some time to digest this. I'm hoping, I don't know if we see characters from this series in future series. I'm wondering if maybe I will feel better about this series if we get more from those characters in the future and this isn't like the last thing we see from them. Maybe that'll make me feel a little bit better. But anyway, so surprise because pretty mixed responses on parts of it, but I did definitely enjoy this and I highly recommend the Live Ship Traders series to anyone, with the caveat of major content warnings for enslavement, sexual assault, child abuse. You should know that about this series before you commit to it. And then hits. All right, so I want to start, because I had 5 4.5 stars. Those are obviously all my top hits. I do want to mention my top 4-star briefly because again, this is in a different vlog. This was in my Instagram Secretly Picks My TBR vlog. Really enjoyed the appeal. I think that this was just fun. I personally really loved this and just had a good time in it. I think if you've never tried a mystery that is sort of mixed media the way this is, I guess like epistolary / mixed media, this is definitely worth giving a try because I think this is a good representation of what that kind of book is like. And it's a good one if you were trying to get better at solving whodunits because it is inviting you as the reader to solve whodunit, and it definitely gives you the clues along the way to do that. So I think this could also be, if you like mysteries where you are supposed to be able to figure it out, this is definitely that. So yeah, this was just a lot of fun and different. It's just fresh. It's nice when you get a mystery that's just a little bit different. 2 4.5 stars that again, I have talked about in detail in a vlog, so I don't want to use so much of my time in this wrap up talking about, but they are both excellent and I highly recommend both. In the Dream House by Carmen Maria Machado it's just great. It's very different. I don't know that I've read a memoir quite like this before. I feel like it's pretty unique in its approach to telling the story. It's very lyrical. The prose itself is very beautiful. Content warnings for this for intimate partner abuse, violence, etc. Yeah, I think that this is a very interactive reading experience. It invites the audience or the reader to make meaning with the author, because she's very deliberate in what she chooses to spell out versus what she chooses to sort of allude to and let you make an inference with. So it is a very interactive, I feel like, reading experience in that respect, and the audiobook is absolutely wonderful. So this has been very hyped to me. It is not surprising to me that I loved it, because I did. And similarly, a very hyped but well-deserved hyped book is Hood Feminism by Mickey Kendall. This is, I would say, if you have read, what would be a good comp title to this? I feel like Bad Feminist maybe would be maybe the comp title for this, of this is going deeper and further than Bad Feminist did, talking very explicitly about intersectional identity, or you know what, maybe Shrill. Shrill might be a good first book comp in terms of like sort of mainstream, and when I say mainstream I mean like white, because I feel like mainstream feminism is dominated by white women. That's just a fact. And this is sort of taking a lot of those core ideas and principles and having what is often called womanism, but like a more intersectional, challenging version of feminism, saying it's not enough to just address issues that are top of mind for, frankly, people like me, upper middle class white ladies with graduate degrees. Like, that isn't enough. Feminism, for it to be effective, has to encompass all women's experiences, and that includes trans women, that includes women of color, women of different religious backgrounds, different socioeconomic backgrounds, educational backgrounds. Like, it has to be for everyone. And this is specifically talking about that in the context of Black women. And I think it's just really well written, really thought-provoking, and the kind of book you could read several times and get more and more out of it. So super well executed. Not surprising to me that this was a hit and gets recommended so much, because it is that good. And then the 4.5 stars, let's see here. Ooh, I don't know which ones to talk about first. I don't know what my top 4.5 star is for this month, because I feel pretty passionately about all of them. We'll save the one I've been most anticipating for last, I guess. But maybe we'll start with the one that I know, in terms of its quality, I'm not gonna tell you this is a 4.5 star book, but in terms of what I like, which is that's the only thing I can go off of, okay? In terms of Mara's taste and what Mara enjoys in a speculative or paranormal romance, Go Hex Yourself by Jessica Clare is just what I like. And again, I think that this is very much benefiting from the fact that I read this during the week of the Russian invasion and all the trans stuff happening in Texas, and just being like, what is going on, and just needing an escape. So I think that this is certainly a case of like the book meeting me in my moment. Okay, I get that, but I just love Jessica Clare / Ruby Dixon. I just love her. I love the way she does these speculative books and just her romances in general. I love that these books are often featuring characters who are kind of not the smartest, but like in an ordinary way, not in a too stupid to live way, but just in a like, yeah, people in real life are just sometimes kind of dumb or like kind of stupid about certain things, I guess. And her characters do that in a way that's great. She has written this kind of story a few times, and I really like it. It's a Grump Sunshine paranormal. It reminds me quite a bit of Between a Vamp and a Hard Place, with the difference being we get a dual POV as opposed to just from the heroine's point of view, which I think benefited the book. Basically, the setup is there's this ancient family of witches and warlocks. They get their magic from the Roman gods. So the matriarch of the family is like 2,000 years old, and she needs an assistant. She hires somebody who, it's specifically talking about spellcraft, and there's like a kind of card game called Spellcraft. So this girl shows up thinking she's going to be an assistant to somebody who's like some sort of weird spellcraft collector or designer or something. And actually the ad has been enchanted so that you can only read it if you have lineage from this same group of witches and warlocks. So she has magic somewhere in her blood, and she's gonna get trained to be a witch. So she's working for the matriarch, and the matriarch's nephew is this very grumpy, very emo warlock who does not think that this woman has any business being there. So it's a little bit like hate to love kind of a scenario, but he immediately is like, God, but I can't stop thinking about her freckles. Do you know what I mean? It's that kind of scenario. So I loved it. I know it's not the highest quality book. I feel weird like I'm talking it down. I just know that this is not a book for everyone, and I want to be clear. It was a book for me, but it will not be a book for everyone. I think other people will find it too slow burn, or they make dumb decisions sometimes. They absolutely do, and that's okay with me. I liked the magic. There's going to be more, I think, in the series. It seems like they're setting up a sequel with a girl who works in a supply shop for magic-y stuff and a different warlock, but yeah. I really enjoyed this. I had a really good time in it, and God, just thank God for Jessica Clare in these dark and gloomy times. The next one is one that the last two we're going to talk about are two very highly anticipated books from very many people, so I'm pleased to tell you that I personally really enjoyed both of these books. The first one being Book Lovers by Emily Henry. Look, Emily Henry don't need me to talk her up. Everybody is loving her. She is having a moment. And I think it's because her actual writing is so good. And I think it connects with readers outside of people who traditionally read romance. The way she tells her stories, the way she sort of sets up her characters and kind of moves people around in her plots is romance. Like, it is a contemporary romance, no doubt about it. But I think the sort of, maybe the authorial posture, the authorial voice is inviting to people who don't traditionally think of themselves as romance readers, which I think is so cool and makes me excited, because I'm sure that there is some population of those readers who's like, oh yeah, I do kind of like this. Maybe I'll try something else, which I love. So Book Lovers is very meta, which is also something that I love. And that's really, I would say that and the banter in this book took it from a 4 to a 4.5. I don't know that this is my favorite plot of hers, but I just loved her writing in it so much that it really kind of bumped it up for me. Basically, the setup for this is, you know, in the small town, like the Hallmark movie In a Small Town at Christmas, where dude comes from the big city and falls in love with the small town girl and leaves behind his frigid girlfriend who doesn't understand what's real anymore. She's just caught up in superficial things, whatever. Our heroine is the frigid woman who keeps getting left behind. And this has happened to her 4 times. And so she's very aware. She thinks of life in terms of these tropes because she's a literary agent, and she's just very aware, basically like, damn, it's happening again. So we see her the second time it happens to her, and she is having her first interaction with this dude who she works with, and they don't have a very good start. A couple years later, they both run into each other in this small town. They're both there for very different reasons, and love ensues. Their banter is fantastic. It is a really well-paced book. Her writing is just great. I really like the way she does family dynamics and talks about like grief. She always has like a nice layer of meaning in with her books. Like I said, some of the plot progression I wasn't totally sold on, but I think the writing and the character work totally carried it for me. And so yeah, this is very comfortably a 4.5-star book, and I think that people are not gonna be disappointed. I personally liked but didn't love People We Meet on Vacation the way it seems like everyone else did. For me, this is about the same as Beach Read. Like, in terms of my personal enjoyment, I would put them at about the same. But yeah, that I'm very pleased to report I really loved, because I know a lot of you guys are looking forward to that, and I can't wait for you to read it. It's only a couple months away. So strap in for that. And then Fevered Star is my last 4.5. And this is another one that I am guessing that I am going to have a higher rating for it than a lot of people will, because the pacing in this one is not as good as the first one. And I know some people just didn't even like the pacing in the first one. So if you had a problem with that in the first one, you ain't gonna like this one either. But I really love this. We're dealing with the fallout from the big thing that happened at the end of the first book. And I think thematically this is a super interesting book. We have a lot of parallels of sibling dynamics between our point of view characters that I thought were really thought-provoking. I think this book has a lot to say about religion, obviously, because one of our main point of view characters is the like living vessel for a god. So I think that lends itself well to some really interesting reflections on religion. I continue to stand Zyla, I never know exactly how to say her name, Sheila and Sariapo, like, this is a stan account for them. I guess maybe some of this is, now that I'm thinking between this and Go Hex Yourself, and the fact that I love The Love Hypothesis so much last year, do I just secretly, like, did I just miss my opportunity to be a Raylo fangirl? Possibly. Maybe if I had been on the internet as a teen when those were coming out, that probably would have been my fandom. I just like those dynamics. I wasn't necessarily super standing them in the movies, but apparently that is just a dynamic I really like. So anyway, I continue to really like that situation, and I just love the characters so much. much, and I thought that it was really interesting where this book went. It is shorter, and I think it felt rushed. Like if I had tried to put my like objective hat on, I could see that some people will feel like this is a weirdly paced book and it should have probably been longer. Possibly. That seems like it's likely the case, but I just had such a good time. I love this world. I love Rebecca Roanhorse's writing. She is, I'd say safe to say she's one of my favorite authors at this point, and I love the character. Yeah, I just love it. Loved it, loved it, loved it. I don't know if everybody else will feel as warmly towards it as I did, but who cares? It's my channel, so I'm giving it 4.5 stars. And with that, I think that wraps up my reading for February. I hope we still have some good energy going into March, because I'm just really on a roll recently with a lot of books being read and a lot of books that I'm enjoying as I'm reading them. So here's hoping. Definitely let me know, A, what you thought about any of the books I talked about, but B, because I've been vlogging so much recently, how are you guys feeling about this mid-month check-in and end of the month check-in? Do you still like the format? Does it make sense? Because I know I'm referring a lot to videos that have already been put out, and that might be annoying. I don't know. You guys can let me know how you're feeling about that. Yeah, maybe I need to adjust that. We can certainly do that if need be. But yeah, that will do it for me. So if you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, follow me on the social medias if you are so inclined. I have all that information listed in the description box below, and I think that will do it. I hope you're having an absolutely lovely day today, and I will just talk to you soon. Bye!